Right, today I'm going to show you how to turn your simple race car game we did in a previous lesson and turn it into a car collection game. Now this is going to require us to change the background and add a bit more scripting and also some things to collect. And if we have time, add an enemy to try and avoid. So we're going to do a number of things. The first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to just rename this sprite to car. It will be clear why I did that later. Right, I'm going to go to the stage. I'm going to go to my backdrops. I'm going to delete any backdrops I don't need. I technically don't need this anymore, so I'm going to delete it. Yes, or in fact edit it. That's even better. And what I'm going to do, I want to actually have just a little bit of green areas, and they're mainly grey. So I'm going to fill in all of this, and then I'm going to get a pen tool, and basically just draw on. Make that a bit bigger. I'm just going to draw on the grey areas that I want to keep. So I want that bit to be green, and that pen's a bit too big. I want sort of green part in the middle. I want a little bit of green in this corner, and perhaps a bit of green over here. And I'm going to use the fill tool just to fill all of that grey. Great, brilliant. Okay, so there's my background. Now, a couple of things we need to set up. First, we need to go to the car. Now, I want the car to be down here when it's reset, because I want to keep all this script because that's how I want it to control. And this piece I still want when it comes off when it touches the green. I want it to reset, but I don't want it to reset here. I want it to reset down here. So I'm going to move down to the bottom, and you'll notice it changes that information. You can just type it in, but just for speed, it's easier just to drag it. So now, when we go to off the road, which we'll just test. Oops. It resets there. Brilliant. Okay, so that's nice and simple. We don't need this anymore, so I'm going to throw it away. Now, we need to add something to collect. So I'm going to add a new sprite. I'm going to actually paint a new sprite. I'm just going to paint a very simple red can, which is going to be a little oil can. It doesn't have to be perfect, because this is an example, but I'm just going to do an oil can. You could write things on it if you wanted to, but I'm just going to keep it simple. Now it is massive, but I want to shrink it down quite a lot. Yeah, that's probably about right. So it's quite small now, so that's fine. So we're going to be collecting these little objects, and I'm going to call it oil can. Again, the names will be clear in a second why I am doing this. So we've got our car, we've got our oil can. Now what I need to do is actually put a script now on the oil can, so when the car touches it, it vanishes. So let's just get the important bits of information. So when the green flag is clicked, this is going to run forever because we want it to keep happening. And if something happens, then I want it to hide. I want it to vanish. That's under looks. And the sensing part is when it's touching the car, which is why we've named it. So when it's touching the car, I want it to hide. I'd also like to add a score. I want to add some scores to this. So I'm going to quickly go to data and add a score. I'm going to make a variable called score for all sprites. And while I'm here, I'm just going to make another variable for lives, which I'll use in a second. But once I touch, when the car touches it, I want it to hide, and then I would like it to change score by 1, which means it adds 1 to the score. Something we've got to remember is when the game starts, we want to make sure all of the oil can appears. If you don't tell it to appear, it will still be hidden. So I need to add this in. So now when I start the game, it will show it, and then it's going to be running this piece of script or code, and it's waiting to touch the car. When it touches the car, it's going to hide and add 1 to the score. We can test this just by driving around, and you can see the score went up by 1. Brilliant, works. I'm going to click stop, and then I'm going to click start. Now something here which hasn't happened is the car needs, of course, reset to the beginning whenever the game starts. I'm just going to add that piece of information as well in, so now it should reset perfectly. So when the green flag is clicked, go back to the start. Now this piece of information could be up here, but it's just about making sure you understand what each piece does. It's about segmenting each action almost. This resets the game, this bit's to do with the sensing, this bit's to do with controls. Now, I can add more cans. What I can do quite simply is I can just duplicate this item as many times as I want, and it'll work perfectly because the code is set up, the script is set up so that when it touches the car, okay, that's why I did it that way, and it's why I made one to start with. If you draw them all and then add them one at a time, it'll take a long time. I'm not going to add more yet. I'm not going to duplicate yet because I'm going to duplicate the car first. Now, the reason why I'm duplicating the car is because I want to make an enemy. I want something to avoid. And I'm going to go to my costume and just edit the car ever so slightly. I'm just going to change the colour of the costume to purple to make it look evil. And I'm going to change the name to bad car or evil car. Let's call it evil car, because he's the bad guy we have to avoid. Now, it doesn't really matter where this guy starts in the game, but let's put him up here. Now, most of this stuff we don't need anymore now. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of the controls because it's not going to be controlled by it. I don't need any of this color, any of this sensing for coming off the road because I don't want him to. He's going to be moving around trying to bump into our player. But I do want to know where it starts. So currently he is pointing. This is his position. So I'm just going to add that in. So now when I start the game, he's going to go to here. So that's a starting point. Now, what I'm going to add to him to make him move is exactly the same instructions I used to make the fish move in the fish tank animation. So I'm going to go to when green flag is clicked, I'm going to add this forever, and I want it to move forward 10 steps. And then if it comes to the edge, I would like it to bounce. And I'm going to do the same trick again. I'm going to just adjust that direction. So instead of it moving forward, it's going to now move this way. That's forward for it. So when it hits the edge, it's going to bounce off, so it'll appear to be moving fairly randomly. So now as I move around, it is jumping. Now there is a slight problem I've done here, which is my mistake. I shouldn't have had this here because you don't want to point in direction 90. I need the direction to be set like this. That's my mistake, but now it's going to be moving around the screen fairly randomly. I think we probably need to make the direction be a bit more extreme, and then that's better. So now it's moving around. Now, as I move the car around, I need to be able to avoid the purple car. The purple car is moving very quickly, so I'm going to change the speed to 5. But when the evil car touches me, I want something to happen. I want to lose a life, don't I? So I'm going to come back to my car, and we're going to add a bit more information. So a lot of this could be here. In fact, we're going to duplicate this. We're going to borrow this, and we're going to change it. Instead of touching green, I want to be touching the evil car. I don't want it to say anything. You could make it say something if you wanted to, but what I want it to do is I want it to change lives by -1, and then I want it to reset the game as well. So you've got to try and avoid the car. So let's try this. So hopefully what will happen is if he touches me, yep, it's just bounced off of him and it goes back. I've got to avoid the green. There you go, that's fine. You'll notice the lives are going quite a lot down. We do need to make sure that it can't keep taking lives off for a second. Sometimes a wait command is worth looking at. Just to make sure it can't keep happening. So if we just do this, so it changes, waits a second, then at least that car can get out of the way, but it should work perfectly. The last thing we need to do, of course, is, other than, of course, adding more score, is we need to make sure the score and the lives set and reset at the beginning of the game. A bit of housekeeping to make sure the game actually works, because at the minute we've got -28 lives because of when the car touched it. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to go when clicked, we're going to have data, and we're going to set lives, and set lives not to 0, set lives to say 3, and then we're going to set the score to 0, and then that way when we start the game it starts off, so we can collect properly, so whenever the game starts. Now we can actually add one more part to this game. We probably want to keep playing till we get to a certain score, or we want to keep playing until the game ends and we have lives 0. That's one extra thing to add, and the way we do this is with some background changes. So I'm just going to do this very quickly. I'm just going to add a background, And I'm just going to use the text tool just to say game over. Okay, it's very, very quick. You could do more, you could color it in, you could do different colors. I think I'll make green just quickly. To make it so we've got it green here. Okay. Now what I'm going to do in the scripting, I'm going to go back to here. Now by doing this, I've got to, of course, tell it when the game starts to start on backdrop 1. And again, I can name these if I wanted to. In fact, backdrop 2 to make things a bit easier. But basically, what I want to happen now is it's going to be waiting for something. So forever. And if something happens, I want to switch to game over. Or you can make another backdrop which says, well done, you've won, and it'll switch to that. So here we go. We want to go to looks, switch to backdrop 1, which is the one that says game over. And the if is if the score, the lives is equal to 0. So where we go to lives. So when the lives is equal to 0, then switch to backdrop 1. You'd make something very similar than this. If score is equal to 10, then switch backdrop to win background, and it would work in a similar way. So you'd sort of duplicate this and just change lives to score, and you'd make a new background. So left click, stop this and play. So now let's just test this. 2, and then I've hit him twice, so I've got to find him now. Come to me. Sometimes this is the difficult bit, making him actually hit you. There we go, game over. You'll notice the game is still playing. I missed one thing, I forgot. What I need to do, I need to add under control stop all. And if I add that under here, if lives, switch background, it will stop all the cars moving. And I'll just show you that once more just to prove it works. Here comes the car. There you go, and all the cars stop moving. So hopefully this will gives you a starting point to create your own game. You can always change the theme completely, make it not about cars, make it about collecting anything else you want it to be. As I said, to add more oil cans, you just simply duplicate it and then you can move them around. Can you make a second player, and so you can race against each other? What can you change about the game to make it even better? Thank you.